Once, deep in a forest older than the stars in the night sky, lived a mother who her children simply called Mama, and her two boys, Nolan and Samuel. Their home was a snug wooden cabin, wrapped in vines and whispers of mystery. To Nolan and Samuel, the forest was vast and endless, but to Mama, it was the last safe place in a world overtaken by a shadowy force she called the evil. Mama always said the evil was clever, able to wear the faces of loved ones or strangers to trick you. But one touch, that was all it needed to take you forever. So, she made a rule: no one would leave the house without a rope tied to their waist, tethering them to the safety of home. And every morning, the family would gather and chant a prayer to their house, thanking it for keeping them safe. One day, Mama said, "We'll be free of the evil. But for now, the forest is our shield." The boys believed her. Why wouldn't they? Mama's voice carried the weight of truth, and her love for them was a shield stronger than the ropes they wore. But the forest wasn't just mysterious, it was dangerous. One crisp morning, while the boys were out foraging for mushrooms and berries, they began to bicker. Samuel teased Nolan, and Nolan, in a moment of frustration, stepped on Samuel's rope. Samuel tumbled to the ground, the rope snapping loose, and he cried out in pain. His ankle was broken, and he was untethered. Nolan froze, realizing what he'd done, but before he could move, Mama appeared like a whisper on the wind, dragging them both back to safety. She said she saw something, a shadow in the form of her own mother. That night, as she patched Samuel's ankle, Mama's eyes were filled with fear. Time passed, and winter crept in like a wolf at their door. Snow covered the forest floor, and their food stores dwindled. Hunting was impossible, and the ground was too frozen to grow anything. Mama's visions grew darker. She saw Samuel and Nolan hurt in ways she couldn't explain, and sometimes she whispered about the father they didn't know, how he had been taken by the evil. One evening, with nothing left to eat but bark from trees, Mama made a grim decision. "We'll have to take the dog," she said. Nolan's heart sank, and he couldn't bear it. When Mama led their dog into the greenhouse to do the unthinkable, Nolan acted. He cut her rope and locked her inside. "You'll see, Mama," he cried through the glass. "There's nothing out there. The evil isn't real." But inside the greenhouse, Mama's face turned pale. She saw a figure, a woman with the same kind smile as her own mother. Mama whispered, "It's not real," but the figure grew closer and closer still. Unable to bear the sight, Mama took her own life before Nolan's eyes. The boys were left alone. Nolan blamed himself for what happened, and Samuel, heartbroken and angry, began to change. One day, driven by hunger and desperation, Nolan ventured farther than ever before. He tied his rope to himself and walked until the forest parted. He stumbled onto a road. Nolan called for help, and a hiker heard his voice. But when the hiker arrived at their cabin, Samuel confronted him with a crossbow. "He's with the evil," Samuel shouted, his eyes wild. Despite Nolan's pleas, Samuel shot the man. Nolan chased after the hiker as he fell, calling out for help on a strange device before taking his last breath. Among the man's belongings, Nolan found food, a feast in their eyes. But that night, a girl arrived at the cabin, claiming to be the hiker's daughter. She looked at Samuel with wide, frightened eyes and said, "That flashlight, it's my father's." As she fled into the forest, she turned. Her face twisted, her body melted into shadows. She wasn't a girl at all. She was the evil, and before Samuel could run, she touched him. Back at the cabin, Samuel was no longer himself. His eyes gleamed with something dark, and he turned on Nolan. In the chaos, Samuel set the house on fire. Flames roared as Nolan tried to escape, but the evil appeared, wearing Mama's face, reaching for him. Nolan didn't fight. He embraced her. "If you're Mama," he whispered, "then you can't hurt me." The figure dissolved into ash, and the fire consumed the house. When rescuers arrived, they found Nolan among the ruins. As they carried him to safety, Nolan asked, "Where's Samuel?" To his shock, They said Samuel was alive. As the helicopter soared over the forest, Nolan looked at his brother, who leaned in close and whispered with a chilling smile, "She loves me more." In Samuel's hands was the Polaroid camera. The photo developed slowly, revealing a shadowy figure holding Samuel close. The evil was real, and now it was part of him. "Now, my darling," Mama's voice softened, "remember this. Love is powerful, but so is fear. Never let fear tie you down, and always stay curious. Sweet dreams."